Good evening. Welcome to the February 6th meeting of the Newmarket Town Council. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we'll start with a public forum, and then there is going to be, following the public forum, will be a public hearing on an ordinance to prohibit tobacco purchases by people under 21. So we open with public forum at this point.
Good evening. My name is Helen Sanders. I've lived at 14 Hilton Drive in Newmarket for the last 17 years. I understand that no one has signed up to be on the upcoming ballot for the 2 town council openings. I am mounting a write-in campaign for one of the open positions on the town council. My background includes over 25 years as a certified public accountant working with small businesses and local nonprofit groups. I was a founding partner of Sanders and Karcher CPAs in Portsmouth, from which I am now retired. I understand the needs of small businesses and their important roles in the community. I have held elected office. Before moving to Newmarket, I lived in the town of Barrington for 26 years. While there, I served as elected to the Board of Library Trustees and served as their treasurer. I participated in the expansion and renovation of our library and in the hiring of our new librarian. I have also served as president of the Barrington Chamber of Commerce for 2 years. I am currently a member of St. Mary's Church in Newmarket. I serve on their finance committee, and I am the coordinator of our program with the Seacoast Family Promise for families in transition, where 3 weeks a year we provide shelter to families experiencing homelessness. My granddaughter is currently a kindergarten in Newmarket, and I am aware of the issues surrounding our schools and the importance of our education system. As a former softball coach, I support our Newmarket Recreation Department in the important role they play in the lives of the children of our town. As a taxpayer in the town, I am also aware of the increasing property tax burden. I believe that there is a need to maintain town infrastructure and also maintain fiscal responsibility. Based on my prior experiences, I think I would make a positive contribution to the council, and I will ask for the support of the community to write in my name on Election Day. Thank you.
Good. Would you just say your name again?
Sure.
Make sure everybody has
It's Helen Sanders, and that's without a U.
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
Good evening, council members and town folk. My name is Larry Doyle. I live at 116 Main Street in Newmarket. I've been here, a carpetbagger, over 30 years or so. But prior to tonight's meeting, you received from your water rights subcommittee members a recommendation to you on the resident proposed Newmarket Freedom from Chemical Trespass rights-based ordinance. This ordinance seeks to protect Newmarket's people in its Lamprey River and Great Bay Estuary watershed. The committee members have forecast that they will recommend that Newmarket's town council henceforth seriously consider future resident proposed rights-based ordinances, also known as RBOs, but they've also forecast they will not recommend the currently proposed one, the Newmarket Freedom from Chemical Trespass RBO. In response, and as a member of ANCER answer, here is the first of 7 responses to the committee members' assertions made during their final meeting considering the RBO. The assertion I'll respond to is as follows. The RBO is
Larry,
Yep.
Can I just ask, is this not what we heard at the last meeting at the beginning?
It is.
Do you really feel it's?
Well, I wasn't. If you question it, then that tells me yes, you're right.
I feel like I remember
Yeah,
what your points were, and we also got it in writing, a lot of the content.
Okay, good.
So I mean, I wouldn't restrict your right to speak before us, but I just would say I remember at least, and I don't know how other people feel, but I remember what you said.
I don't want to eat up time, but if I.
Is he allowed to say his statement?
I just was pointing out that it's a repeat of what happened last time.
Exactly so, because it's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, well, anyway, the response is that these rights-based ordinances are conservatively unifying. a phenomenon uncovered in UNH sociologist Cliff Brown's 216 article titled "Water Concerns Unite Citizen Activists, Community Rights Movement Transcends Party, Age, and Gender." I don't expect people to read this thing. I did. I thought it was very good. But on my own personal experience, as old as I am, I've seen the rivers get cleaned up some, the air get cleaned up some in this country to great effect, and that's through regulation. But these regulations have not stopped what this ordinance is about. It's about people getting sick and your environment being despoiled. And we've been headed in the right direction so well. Now we're seeing some of those things being torn down, going in a different direction. So from the bottom up, we get answer are saying, we're a bunch of little Davids. Now we have to fight a lot of Goliaths. And that's what we're doing here. I would like to see the progress I've seen in my lifetime not just stop and degrade. And that's what these ordinances are about. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. You have heard this one before as well, but there's a lot of new people here that might be interested in hearing this. My name is Kenny Najum. I live at 288 Wildley Falls Road in Newmarket. The committee member assertion I'll respond to is as follows. We don't know what unintended consequences the RBOs will cause. My response to this is that is true, but 15 RBOs adopted by 11 New Hampshire towns haven't had any. Whereas the CDC reported in July 2018 the unintended consequences of water contamination. New Hampshire has the country's highest rate of pediatric cancers, including state and federally recognized clusters of rare cancers in seacoast areas contaminated by PFAs, PFOs, PFOAs, and PFCs. Thank you.
Good evening, council members and members of the town. My name is Jerry Martin. I live in Newmarket at 212 South Main Street. The committee member assertion that I would like to respond to is as follows. I quote, "We should wait until an amendment to New Hampshire's Bill of Rights officially recognizes rights-based ordinance making, so we've authority to instate them," end quote. My response to this is that last year, the New Hampshire Community Rights Amendment received support from 1/3 of New Hampshire's House. This year, Newmarket's Representative Ellen Reed will sponsor it again. If it passes New Hampshire's House and Senate and is voted in by New Hampshire's people, it will protect rights-based ordinances by recognizing people's right to adopt them. But it won't make rights-based ordinances official. What makes rights-based ordinances official is each New Hampshire resident's inherent and inalienable right to self-determine, exercised collectively in a vote of the town's people. Newmarket's town charter does not allow residents to vote on non-budgetary matters, leaving them dependent on town council members to adopt rights-based ordinances according to their oath to uphold Newmarketers' rights as enumerated in New Hampshire's Bill of Rights. Outside of Newmarket, New Hampshire townspeople who can make rights-based ordinance vote haven't waited for the amendment because they and their ecosystems cannot afford to wait, and because they already have the New Hampshire inherent and inalienable authority to adopt rights-based ordinances as affirmed by New Hampshire's Bill of Rights, Articles 1, 2, 3, 8, 10, and 32. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Andrew DeMeo. You've heard most of my statement before, but I'll repeat it for the public. I live at 147 Main Street, Apartment 2 in Newmarket. The committee member assertion I'll respond to is as follows. Change has always been achieved by moving through a governmental process. My response to this is that systemic change in every large people's movement has always required moving outside of governmental process in order to right legal wrongs. In fact, it's literally my full-time job to help create social change outside of the governmental process. In my professional life, I work for an organization called Second Nature. They're a nonprofit that has successfully catalyzed universities representing 1/3 of all American college students to aggressively pursue carbon neutrality on their campuses. My employer exists because our government's response to the threat of climate change has been and remains inadequate. Our network represents America's first coordinated, industry-wide successful response to the threat of climate change. And we have achieved this by mobilizing a coalition of activists, scientists, and higher ed professionals to convince universities to lower their greenhouse gas emissions, which again has happened by organizing outside of a governmental process. Moving back to the issue of the RBO in New Hampshire, even with legislation trying to address the matter, it's legal to release PFAs, PFOs, PFOAs, and PFCs into our water at safe limits that yet bioaccumulate and cause cancer. If the People's Community Rights Movement sticks to governmental process without including RBOs, we will be apologizing to future generations and saying, sorry, water contamination was legal.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Waters. I live at 147 Main Street, Apartment 2 in Newmarket. I will be responding to 2 committee member assertions. The first is as follows. We shouldn't be a fiefdom telling other towns what they can or can't do. My response to this is that protecting water is basic survival. It's not about controlling and regulating other towns. It's about recognizing rights of water and people everywhere. If other towns approve use of chemicals that end up in Newmarket water, and if Newmarket's town council adopts an RBO banning those chemicals, then the people of other towns will deal with the RBO like they must deal with any other differing ordinances New Hampshire towns have on various issues. The next committee member assertion I'll respond to is as follows. What's the point of this RBO? We have no direct threat. My response to this is that the direct threat is that Newmarket's people are unempowered to vote on local governing decisions that afford greater protection than harms legalized by the state. The RBO would empower Newmarketers, their community, and their ecosystems with local governing authority to address harmful activities, even to the point of saying no amount of harm is okay. So the proposed RBO's point is its proactivity. For instance, and according to a Newmarket Conservation Commission member, town gravel pits are potentially destined to be landfills. The RBO would help Newmarketers avoid finding out decades from now, like Greenlanders have with their Coakley landfill, that landfill leaching poisoned our water. The RBO would also help Newmarketers avoid fight after over harms already in town, including PFAs in our car wash's Teflon Shine service, and the town's use of cancer-causing glyphosate for weed control. Furthermore, Eversource's Seacoast Reliability Project will stir up hundreds of years of industry toxins in Little Bay to mix with PFAS contamination already in Great Bay. Alarmingly, the SEC, as recommended by the NHDES, determined that the project's toxins are not concerning for surrounding watersheds. It decided this despite what the U.S. Geological Survey and EPA found. Those 2 organizations found that the porousness of the bay's bedrock allows chemicals to drain into groundwater from which Newmarket draws drinking water. Last time I read the statement, I read a very personal statement about my experiences as a cancer patient advocate here in the Seacoast, which is a community that has higher than both state and national average rates of cancer. I don't like having to repeat myself on this issue any more than you guys like hearing it. We have state and federally recognized cancer clusters here. Our elevated cancer rate is not a mystery. We know why we have cancer in our communities. We know it is linked to high rates of carcinogen exposure, including from our water sources. We have multiple EPA Superfund sites in our watershed. These carcinogens are our direct threat. They are certainly directly threatening to the patients I have worked with and to our friends and neighbors who will continue to develop cancer at higher than average rates until something is done. I believe that the facts are self-evident, and I believe that this issue is urgent. I quote Dr. Aurora Wood Moore, a policy analyst with over 20 years' experience, who wrote that the sad fact is that government regulations give us our health. There is no amount of buying organic produce that can protect us from carcinogens the way that this RBO could. Dr. Moore's statement is even more relevant here because I, and every citizen in Newmarket, cannot choose for myself which risk is greater, adopting the non-traditional but legally sound RBO, or accepting carcinogenic chemicals in my drinking water, the drinking water of my husband, my family, my friends, and my neighbors. On behalf of myself and of every patient I have worked with and will continue to work with, I ask, please, give us our health.
Good evening again, council members. My name is Monica Christopoli. I live at 6 Central Street in Newmarket. The committee member assertion I'll respond to is as follows. We should just work through the regulatory agencies. I will respond to this differently than I did at the last meeting. I will respond to it by reading the testimony I've submitted to the New Hampshire about the New Hampshire Community Rights Amendment CACR 8. And after I read this testimony, I'll tell you more about the amendment and our invitation to you to adopt a resolution in support of it. Dear House, Municipal, and County Government Committee members, my name is Monica Christopoli. I live with my husband, our 6-year-old son, and our 3-month-old daughter in Newmarket, New Hampshire. I'm writing in support of an ought-to-pass recommendation for CACR 8. I seek this amendment's protection for the people's right to self-determine within their own communities, always expanding, not limiting people's rights. To speak more plainly from my heart as a parent and a water activist, I want to say how frustrated I am that it is not up to the people to determine how much more we want to protect ourselves and the water our children drink than the state already protects it, or frankly, does not protect it. Indeed, when fellow community members and I seek to implement water protections at the local level as we have the right to, we are told the regulatory system takes care of that. Just work through the regulatory system. We have tried doing this, but I've found that regulatory agencies facilitate corporate projects and allow certain amounts of harm. They don't protect people or ecosystems. One brief example, regulatory agencies do not require Saint-Gobain to stop using the PFAS that are poisoning Merrimack residents and ecosystems. Regulations require that the company merely provide water filters that cannot filter out the PFAS. It doesn't get much more insulting than that when my fellow residents and I are asked to work through the regulatory system to seek greater protections than we don't already have. Of course, regulatory agencies won't ban contamination because it's neither their job nor legal place to, and so it remains to we the people to do so because our lives depend on it. No one else will do it, and we have the right to. Something else fellow residents and I are told is to work through the legislature rather than at the local level to increase water protection. And the approach has been tried. In fact, this past summer, Governor Sununu signed a law permitting NHDS to go beyond the EPA's recommendations to further decrease the level of PFAS allowed in New Hampshire's water. But NHDS announced this past month that it will not be lowering the amounts of PFAS allowed in New Hampshire water, despite all of the cancer statistics that you've already heard and I won't repeat. But putting aside the failure of the regulatory system, or the success of it as a protector of legalized corporate harm, and putting aside the inability of legislature to penetrate and change this system, the people's right to self-determine at the local level is simply a matter of right. New Hampshire parents should not have to prove the inadequacy of agencies and government to gain protection for their work to keep their children safe. CACR 8 would protect the work parents are trying to do at the local level across New Hampshire to protect water for their children and all Granite Staters. Speaking to you again, I'd like to end by inviting you all to go through the necessary steps it will take for you to adopt a resolution in support of this year's proposed New Hampshire Community Rights Amendment, CACR 8. It's the third invitation that you've received for this, the first on December 19th, the second on January 23rd, and then again tonight. Pia would have made the invitation again, but she is sick. So why would you want to adopt a resolution in support of this amendment? I have one more paragraph on that. Last year, prime sponsored by Newmarket Representative Ellen Reed and with bipartisan co-sponsors, the New Hampshire Community Rights Amendment earned 1/3 support in the New Hampshire House. Representative Reed is sponsoring it again this year and again with bipartisan support. With the legislative label CACR 8, it will go into committee hearing with the anticipated date of March 6th, which gives you ample time to go through the steps to adopt a resolution in support of it. This amendment would specifically recognize and enumerate in our New Hampshire Bill of Rights the pathway that the people of New Hampshire already inherently and inalienable have to instate RBOs. More simply, it would make this whole RBO process much easier, especially in towns like ours, where our town charter does not allow us to vote on something like this, RBO. And if you'd like to move forward with adopting such a resolution, you already have copies of it. I will make sure it is in your email again tonight. It has a watermark, draft mark on it in case you wanted to make changes before going forward. We can get you a clean copy. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Joan DiOrio. I live at 191 Bay Road, and the main reason that I'm here tonight is to speak about the town's use of Roundup as a weed control and also to support the RBO. In case you didn't notice, Roundup has been in the news lately. A school groundskeeper in California recently successfully sued Monsanto for damages incurred by years of exposure to glyphosate usage. He contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and glyphosate affects humans and other creatures in other non-beneficial ways as well. Not everything is cancer. Roundup is the most used pesticide in the world, at least 50% world use. It was considered safe for humans. The reason for that is that it attacks a pathway in living creatures such as bacteria, fungi, algae, parasites, and plants, but not in humans. And this process it affects the way that the living organism processes proteins and amino acids. However, although humans don't have that pathway in their body because we have gut bacteria, it affects the gut bacteria. As a result of that, and it affects gut bacteria found in humans, mammals, and other animals. In several studies, it has been found that even with what are considered safe dosages, exposure to glyphosate-based herbicides, GBH, are capable of modifying the gut microbiota in early development, particularly before the onset of puberty. A study was done in Indiana in 2015 it showed the correlation with exposure to glyphosate for pregnant women, resulting in shorter pregnancies for women with higher concentrations of GBH in their urine and lower birth weight for infants. None of the women studied in the study worked in farming, and no glyphosate was present in their drinking water, suggesting that either inhalation of glyphosate or dietary exposure was the culprit. Other health issues connected with glyphosate: autism, gluten intolerance, or celiac disease. And celiac has a whole list of symptoms that affects people, and it's because of what happens. Their gut cannot process food the way that it would. I found a study from the NIH, and they were talking about a lot about celiac, but reproductive issues were part of that. Glyphosate residues in wheat and other crops are likely increasing due to the growing practice of crop desiccation just before harvest, and not just in wheat, but in many other things that we use. The practice of ripening sugarcane with glyphosate may explain the recent surge in kidney failure among agricultural workers in Central America. We conclude with a plea to governments to reconsider policies considering the safety of glyphosate residues in food.
Ms. Diorio, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, I will try and go as quickly as I can. The scary part for me is that most of us, if not all, have been, without realizing it, exposed to or ingested foods or drinks that contain some amount of glyphosate. I have a link on this. If anybody wants any of this information, I have links for everything that I'm talking about, and believe me, I've left an awful lot out. There are lists of food that people feed their children that have glyphosate in it, and it's something that even at small doses can affect what you do. I just think that the town should consider using something different to control weeds. It'd be best if you didn't use a herbicide, but just don't use anything with glyphosate at the very least. And I think, as far as the RBO is concerned, we should already be protected from this kind of harm at the federal and at the state level, and it's not happening.
Ms. Diorio, your 5 minutes are up.
Okay, I just need to finish this.
The rules are 5 minutes.
Okay, you have to start somewhere. This is where it starts.
John Brackett, 19 Central Street. I'd like to continue on with what the previous speaker was saying about glyphosate. There are organic alternatives that I'm not sure what the financial how it weighs out, but using horticultural grade vinegar with a suffocant like dish soap can be used in place of products with glyphosate. Now, glyphosate products aren't just limited to Roundup, which you can purchase at Tractor Supply by 5-10 gallons at a time or what have you. But the product's also available within 10 miles of here by the gallon, super concentrated in a bunch of different products. I think Merit or 3,4T4 or something else. If you do athletic fields, you might be interested in that. At bare minimum, I'd like to see us stop using the Roundup glyphosate family of products, at least in town on pedestrian walkways, and explore, if we can, transitioning over towards a organic solution like the horticultural grade vinegar, which also has its own dangers. You wouldn't want to get it directly in your eyes. It would blind you. But there are material safety protocols in handling when making the Roundup to spray from concentrate to whatever it is. You don't have to change over any of the spray rigs. It works. It will go through all the same equipment, but it's organic and it won't contaminate things the same way that glyphosate would as well. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Ellen Reed. I live at 283 Leda Lane, and I am one of the state representatives that represent the town of Newmarket. I am also the prime sponsor, as you've already heard multiple times, of CACR 8, which is a proposed New Hampshire constitutional amendment to enshrine what we know is the already existing right of local people to protect their health, safety, and welfare in their natural environments. So I just briefly want to give you an overview of why I've done this and then open up to any questions you have on the more technical aspects. But I say our already existing right for a reason. I teach American government at Great Bay Community College, and I recently had to teach my kids the 10th Amendment, it's very short, and I will read to you. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. This means in our Bill of Rights, the founders have enshrined the fact that people have a right to local control because they understood that when people who live in a location make decisions about their location and not out-of-state corporations looking to make money, that good outcomes for the economy, for your environment, for your health come out of that. People take care of their homes. People take care of themselves. They don't take care of, or I should say, profit-seeking entities that come from other places are not as interested in the health and well-being of your people and your environment as the people who live there are. I think this is a very basic concept. So because this is a constitutional right of people, we believe that, first of all, it's a natural right that the founders talked a lot about, but it's also enshrined in the United States Constitution already. Aside from the RBO that is currently before you tonight, CACR 8 would constitutionally protect your right as the town councilors of Newmarket to pass RBOs in the future to protect Newmarketers or any environmental issues. This empowers you. This frees up your hands to do things in the future. And I understand that the Water Rights Subcommittee suggested that they might support, or that the town should support, future RBOs. So, I know the issue of, would this be challenged in court? Supporting this CACR would ensure that this would not, well, I can't say it wouldn't be challenged in court, but that you would be protected, and it would be less likely that it would be challenged in court. Having said that, yes, other towns have passed RBOs. They have not yet been challenged. And I think for good reason, because this is a right that we already have naturally. And like Martin Luther King pointed out, even if it's not enshrined in law, if we believe that the laws are immoral, it's our moral responsibility to break those laws. Now, this isn't breaking a law, but it is stating that we have this right that isn't yet enshrined in our Constitution. So having said that, I would like you to remember that this does empower you. It doesn't do anything but empower you. And I hope that you can support in a resolution, support CACR 8. And now I'd like to offer myself to any technical questions you may have on the CACR.
Council rules prohibits back and
Oh,
forth between.
I remember that. All right. Well, feel free to contact me. Thank you.
Seeing no further persons coming to the microphone, we close public forum at 7:32 and move on to a public hearing on ordinance number, is that number one?
Number one.
Number 1, 2018-2019, amending Chapter 20 of the Code of the Town of Newmarket, prohibiting the purchase, use, and possession of tobacco to anyone under 21. And I understand that there'll be a brief PowerPoint presentation from the students present here. If there's no objection from any of the counselors. Seeing none.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Temple. I'm a senior at Newmarket Junior Senior High School, and I live at 15 Lamprey River Park.
My name is Grace Lunny. I'm a sophomore at Newmarket Junior Senior High School, and I live at 2 Maple Crest.
And I'm Lydia Zungay. I live at 4 Elm Street, and I'm a freshman. We are all students at Newmarket Junior Senior High School. We are here in support of the proposed town ordinance 1-2018-2019 to raise the age of purchase, use, and possession of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, to 21 years old.
We are members of Newmarket Youth to Youth, a youth empowerment program for students in grades 6 through 12 that works after school towards drug and alcohol prevention within the community. Last year, a statewide Tobacco 21 bill was proposed in the New Hampshire State Senate. Unfortunately, during the 2018 legislative season, the proposal was tabled. However, this means that the bill will be up for discussion again this year and will actually be in public hearing tomorrow in front of the Senate Commerce Committee at 1:15 in Concord. Other youth groups around New Hampshire, including Dover and Keene, have already passed this ordinance in hopes of raising support for the broader initiative in their own localities. We, Newmarket Youth to Youth, hope to raise the same support for this cause in Newmarket. We are hoping with the growing alliance of support throughout New Hampshire, this bill will pass at the state level. Tonight, we hope that Newmarket will show their commitment, not just to the health and safety of our students, but to the future of our town and state. Last year, the state of Massachusetts passed a Tobacco 21 bill. However, the Massachusetts state legislature only passed this legislation after multiple towns and cities across the state passed Tobacco 21 in their own localities.
Some people may say that we should let 18-year-olds decide for themselves whether or not they should use tobacco products. But other commercial products, such as alcohol, require the customer to be 21 to purchase them because they can potentially be dangerous, harmful, or create harmful situations. We feel that tobacco should be put on the same playing field as alcohol. Tobacco and nicotine products, including e-cigarettes, fall into this category because we have seen how addictive they can be, and we know about the dangerous consequences of using these products, such as lung cancer, breathing issues, and most commonly, addiction. This further proves why it would be logical to put on the same playing field as alcohol in terms of harmful qualities and impact on public health.
Traditional tobacco use in New Hampshire among teens has been on the decline for the past 20 years, and it is important that we keep this positive trend going. In 2001, 25% of high schoolers reported using e-cigarettes. As of 2015, the smoking rate for regular cigarettes in New Hampshire among teens had dropped to 9%, according to statewide Youth Risk Behavior Survey, or YBRS data. We feel that is an amazing decrease to see in just 14 years.
With those kind of statistics, you may wonder why there is a need for such an ordinance. However, the real issue at hand is the use of e-cigarettes in the youth. or other nicotine delivery systems, which would also be restricted to people under the age of 21 by this ordinance.
E-cigarettes are fairly new products and were originally marketed as smoking cessation devices to help longtime smokers overcome their addiction or provide a less harmful alternative. We do not contest that these products do not provide a less harmful alternative for already addicted smokers. What we contest is that these e-cigarette products are not being used as cessation devices among teens. As a matter of fact, they are actually making teens addicted to nicotine. And unfortunately, we are seeing a dramatic increase in e-cigarette use.
As previously mentioned, in 2015, only about 9% of high school students used traditional tobacco products. But in 2017, 24% of high schoolers reported using e-cigarettes, and that number is expected to continue increasing. Based on those statistics alone, it is clear that these products are not providing an avenue to rid nicotine addiction, but rather start it and do so among teens. Fortunately, with this ordinance, we are able to decrease the teen usage of these products and possibly shield thousands of students from ever suffering lifelong addictions. The Institute of Medicine predicts with a Tobacco 21 ordinance, tobacco rates will decrease by 12%. With this ordinance, we predict a continued decline in smoking rates among teens and expect e-cigarette usage to drop as well.
In New Hampshire alone, the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids has projected that over 22,000 kids under the age of 18 right now will suffer life-threatening consequences due to smoking. Most smokers begin smoking at a young age. The longer somebody goes without smoking, studies show the less likely they are to ever smoke at all. About 95% of adults who smoke started before the age of 21, and 75% of youth who smoke now will continue smoking as adults. Increasing the age to 21 will prevent thousands of young people from suffering a lifelong addiction.
Changing the minimum age to purchase, use, and possess tobacco products to 21 will contribute positively to the overall health and safety of the youth in Newmarket. We feel that age restriction should be raised because youth who have access to these products are more likely to suffer from the life-threatening and fatal consequences of tobacco and nicotine. With the current age of sale being 18, it means many seniors in high school who have already reached that age are old enough to legally purchase tobacco products and then bring the tobacco products into the schools or otherwise provide them to younger students.
Most teens who are between the ages of 15 and 17 years old get their tobacco or other nicotine products from someone under the age of 21. By raising the age to 21, a young teen would have to know someone or find someone of at least that age to purchase these products for them, which naturally increases their difficulty. We feel, as a result, teens are less likely to have access to these products, and it will help keep tobacco products out of schools and the hands of young teens.
Speaking candidly, some high school students who have reached the age of 18 go as far as advertising through social media that they are willing to purchase these products for younger students in exchange for financial incentive. This is particularly concerning to us, not only because providing these products to minors and possessing the products under the age of 18 is illegal, but it is also an avenue for abuse of other illegal substances, posing an additional threat to the health of these students.
This particularly pertains to the e-cigarette issue at the middle and high school level. Many teachers, staff, and students have raised complaints about the disruptions that students using these products cause. At our junior senior high school specifically, some students have chosen the bathrooms where they use these products, causing not only a safety concern because these are unmonitored areas of the building, but also a disruption to other students. As projected on the screen and provided in your packets, a significant number of nicotine vaporizing products have been confiscated at the junior senior high school this year on campus. And as you can see, they do not look like your traditional cigarette. Principal Christopher Mazzoni noted in a meeting with youth members that the number of cases involving these products has dramatically risen since last school year. For context, he was able to show us his collection of confiscations from this year and noted that some of them were left out of the picture for purposes of student confidentiality. Furthermore, Mr. Mazzoni also noted that as of December 17th, 2018, the day of our meeting, no issues pertaining to these products involve students above the age of 18. Christopher Mazzoni also wrote a letter in support of this ordinance, which is also included in your packet, where he further voices his concerns about the issues these products are causing on school grounds.
During this meeting, we also discussed the disruptions these products are bringing to the school environment. The first disruption, as previously mentioned, is when and where students choose to use these products. As stated, many students have chosen the bathrooms, which are non-monitored areas of the building, to use these products. This poses a safety concern for students who may also choose to modify these vaporizing products and use other illegal substances with them. Moreover, it creates an uncomfortable environment for the majority of students who choose not to use these products, but who are faced with them in the intimate, non-monitored areas of the bathroom setting.
Due to this issue, for a period of time at the junior-senior high school, teachers were asked to restrict students' bathroom use, except in cases of emergency, to not during class periods. The hope was that if more students were using the bathrooms only during passing periods, it would deter them from using these products. As many of you are aware, our junior-senior high school is very small. We only have 2 bathrooms per gender for about 500 students. So restricting students' bathroom use to only the short passing periods was simply unattainable. We did not have enough facilities to accommodate all these students. Nonetheless, it did not stop them from using these products in the bathrooms or in the building.
Another issue these products bring to our school is that for many teachers, they go unnoticed. As seen on the PowerPoint, many of the nicotine delivery systems students are using are extremely discreet. The products can easily be slipped into the sleeve or pocket of a student and go undetected. Some of these products are designed to look like ordinary devices, such as a USB flash drive and even asthma inhalers. Finally, these products have taken away from countless hours of learning. As per our student handbook, if a student is found in possession of these products, they may be subject to suspension from school for 3 days. And for a found in violation again, could be subject to suspension for up to 10 days, along with any extenuating charges through the police department. That said, learning time is only taken away from the student, but valuable time is also taken from teachers and administrators who have responsibility to many other students as well.
Before closing, some have brought up why the language of this ordinance restricts purchase, use, and possession rather than just the sale of these products. Currently, statewide laws on tobacco products restrict purchase, use, and possession. So for those reasons, we feel that continuity is important and we should keep it as such. Furthermore, if we are to restrict just the sale of these products, it would send the message that as long as the young person wasn't the one to buy it, it's fine if they use it, which we don't feel is a message as a town we want to be sending. Finally, the ordinance language of purchase, use, and possession is much more retailer friendly because it does not only put restrictions on the retailers, and it would eliminate the issues of people going out of town, buying these products, and coming back into town because it would still be illegal to possess them. In closing, we would also like to note that if this ordinance is passed, Newmarket Youth to Youth offers to provide signage for local establishments to inform their customers of the change in town laws. For all of these reasons, we urge you to vote in favor of this Tobacco 21 ordinance and help Newmarket lead New Hampshire in a push for a healthy and smoke-free future. So together we can join countless communities and states across our nation, such as Massachusetts, Maine, New Jersey, Oregon, Hawaii, and California, in raising the age of purchase, use, and possession of tobacco products and nicotine-related products to 21.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nice work. Are there any other presentations for the public hearing, or any other comments on the public hearing?
Hi, my name is Sean Murphy. I live at 1 Forest Street in Newmarket. I've been in town for almost 30 years. I would like to say the presentation is well presented, the points are well received. I have a number of questions about this ordinance and how it's currently worded. First, I'd like to ask, has the Newmarket Police Department been consulted about this ordinance at all and how it would be enforced?
Yes. Yes.
And their position is?
If there's if they see a violation of the law, then they'll have to enforce
If
it.
they see a violation, they'll have to enforce it.
Yeah.
So the issue of someone going across the town line to buy products and bring them back into town is really still on the table here, because they're not going out of their way to search for this, just if they happen to see it. So what we're really doing here with this ordinance is taking money out of the cash registers of businesses here in town. Because we're not only taking the sale of the tobacco products, which I am not encouraging, by the way. I'm not in favor of it, but just in the way it's written. Someone goes 5 minutes down the road to Newfields and buys tobacco products, that's also where they're gonna buy their snacks, their sodas, the bread, the milk, whatever else. Because why stop at a business in town and then go out of town to buy your tobacco products? So it's really something to think about there, about how it affects the town. Also, the issue here is about youth access to tobacco products. That's already legislated. There's already laws against that. An additional law that we're not really going to enforce as much as we should for adults, to restrict access to adults having access to cigarettes, is not really helpful, because it's just an ordinance on the books that already covers everything that we already have. It's not an ordinance for the sake of an ordinance. I don't think is particularly a step in the right direction. Also, I'd like to ask about when this law goes into effect. The people, the young adults that are already 18, 19, 20 years old, that have this right today, that have this right taken away from them now, how are they to respond to that? It's literally taking a right that they have now away from them. Where does that stop? If we go here now, tobacco is a bad product. There's no question about it. This isn't, for me, it isn't about the tobacco. It's about the precedent it sets. If we decide next that fatty foods are not good for us, or that caffeine is not good for us, if we can do this with tobacco, why can't we do it with anything else? Where does it stop? Anyone that thinks that this law doesn't affect them because they're over 21, I think they're mistaken, because this is precedent setting. That we can just decide we don't like a product and make a town rule against it and affect the retailers and the people in town without those people having a vote, by the way. If this was something that went to a ballot and the townspeople had a vote on it, I would be less concerned about it. But this is literally up to 8 people to decide. I don't think that's right. It's not a good idea. It's not the way we should be doing things, in my opinion. That's all I'll say for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Michael Cahill, Ashmont Road, also a state representative, and a co-sponsor of SB 248, which the Senate will hear tomorrow, which would make this law statewide, eliminating the concern about people going to another town. I think the reason that we're trying to raise the age here is because you have people who may be 16 or 17 that look 18, and the retailer is not going to, ask them for every ID. They're not going to check every ID of every customer that comes in. So raising the age to 21 will lift that a little bit so that we won't have people who really don't look 21. You should card somebody who doesn't look the right age. The only way this gets done, enforcement-wise, I think, is if the same people who do enforce liquor laws go into a store, or they send somebody into a store who doesn't, who looks close to the age, and find out if the retailer will ask for ID. That's the way it's enforced. So it's not we're going to have, stormtroopers all over the place and, looking for people, looking under their beds for cigarettes and things like that. But we're just trying to take this step to move the bar a little bit so that people who are, young, older teens don't fall into this habit, which I unfortunately had. And, it has a lasting effect. Many people just aren't able to quit. Even people who I speak with now who say they're not going to vote for this, they can't quit. I see them outside the State House all the time, puffing. Are they free? No, they're not free from tobacco. So I urge you to pass this, and I will certainly vote for the bill in the Senate. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chloe Reynolds, and I live at 12 Lamprey Street. I have been a student in Newmarket my entire life, and I'm currently a freshman. Tonight you have heard from youth members about the problems that tobacco products are bringing to our school. However, you have also heard, or at least you will most likely hear in a few moments, all of the reasons why you shouldn't pass the ordinance.
Though I respect those opinions, in which everyone is entitled to, there is one thing I urge you to keep in mind while making your decision tonight. Most people coming up here to speak in opposition to this issue will not really be affected. Everyone over the age of 21 will still be able to buy their tobacco products, and it will be as if nothing has changed. By passing this ordinance, you'll only be affecting those under 21, the same group with who is calling on you tonight to make this change. These products are causing huge problems in our school, community, and with our friends and our family. Out of everyone in the room, we, the youth, are the ones who are really and truly witnessing firsthand each and every day the issues that these products are causing. And while yes, there is always another side to the argument, we, the young people in favor of this ordinance, are the ones who will be affected. We, the people who will be affected by it, are calling on you to make this change to protect our peers and safeguard all of our futures. For those reasons, I urge you to please vote in favor of this ordinance.
And I think we have correspondence.
Yeah, we received a letter to ask to be read into the record. Members of the Town Council, I apologize for being unable to attend to the February 6th meeting to participate in the public hearing in person. I do, however, want to share my thoughts on ordinance number 1-2018-19, amending Chapter 20 of the Fences and Municipal Provisions of the Town Code. I am in strong opposition to this ordinance on both practical and philosophical levels that I'd like to quickly outline. First, this is a solution in search of a problem. According to the Anti-Tobacco Truth Initiative, high school smoking in New Hampshire is 12% lower in New Hampshire than nationally, 7.8% versus 8.8%. In 2011, 19.8% of high school students in New Hampshire smoked. There have been over 60% decline over 6 years. I'm not sure how that decline constitutes an emergency that requires amending the town ordinance. Second, like business, for the town to take on the additional work of policing and enforcing the new ordinance, we will have to either stop focusing on something else or add capacity. What should our police officers stop doing so as to focus time ensuring store clerks aren't selling tobacco to 19-year-olds? Or should we simply add more officers to the force to enforce this ordinance? Third, prohibitions like this do little, if nothing, to curb abuse. In the United States, you must be 21 to purchase alcohol, and we have a 12.7% of the population with alcohol dependence. In France, the age is 16, and the World Health Organization reports 4.7% of their population has alcohol dependence. In Italy, the legal age is 16, and the World Health Organization reports a 1.3% alcohol dependence. This ordinance is founded upon the idea that there's a linkage between age restrictions and a reduction in risky behaviors, but that the data proves otherwise. Fourth, this ordinance makes it clear that the town government believes it can parent better than I or the parents of Newmarket can. It is not the obligation of the town to help me raise my child. I and the parents of Newmarket are fully capable of helping our children understand the impact of their decisions. This ordinance suggests you simply don't trust us to raise our own children, and that is frankly offensive as a parent. Finally, the age of 18 is considered adulthood in this country. At 18, a man or woman can vote. At 18, a man or woman can raise their right hand and promise their lives in defense of their country. But this ordinance suggests that the Newmarket Town Council does not trust an 18-year-old with the decision to smoke or not. How can we tell a woman or a man at 18 they're smart enough to elect presidents, senators, and governors, but not to make the decision to smoke or not? How can we tell an 18-year-old that they're able to decide for themselves if they will join the military, to live, and to potentially die for their country, but not able to decide for themselves if they want to smoke? 18-year-olds have voted for each of you to sit on this council. Were they of such unsound mind that we can't trust their decisions in the voting booth, or are you suggesting that they are only unprepared to make sound decisions in a convenience store? This is not meant to be a defense of smoking, but a plea not to support what I'm sure was a well-intentioned but ultimately ill-founded idea. I respectfully and strongly request that you do not support this ordinance. Respectfully, Phil Nazaro, former town councilor, 7 Raymond Lane.
Okay, I see nobody else at the microphone, and so we close the public hearing on the smoking ordinance at 7:55. And move on now to, I would like to receive a motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2019 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 23rd meeting.
Second.
Okay, I'll just mention that I talked to the town administrator earlier. There were 3 places in the minutes where they referred to Mr. Allen of, it's supposed to be Smith Garrison. I think he was called Garrison twice, and another Garfield or something the third time, but it's always Smith Garrison. And also it referred to town administrator answering a question, that concerned ongoing maintenance of the dam and how much maintenance would be required. And that was actually, I was the one that answered that question. So those two things have been corrected. I don't know if there are any other corrections. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Council Burns.
Aye.
Council Finch.
Aye.
Council Dumont.
Aye.
Council Cast.
Aye.
Council Bowden.
Aye.
Council Weinstein.
Aye.
Council Pike.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And we'll move on to committee reports. No? Oh, you go first. Sorry. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you're aware, Election Day will be on March 12th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and is going to be held here at the Town Hall. As you're also aware, there are a number of positions that have no candidates. The town clerk and I have talked with the Secretary of State's office. Unlike some elections, a plurality is the only thing needed to win the election. So if someone receives 2 votes and they are the highest vote getter, they are going to be offered the position. If they decline the position, it goes to the next individual. So if somebody gets 10, it goes down the line until somebody accepts the position. And just for also information, that this individual will serve the entire term. This isn't till the next election, like an appointment. It's the entire 3-year term because they've been duly elected. On my unwritten report, just want to let the council know that we are continuing on our emergency management plan upgrades. As the council is aware, we just did our emergency operations plan. Today we had our first meeting of the continuation of operations plan. But the continuation of operations plan is, what do we do after the emergency happens? How do we continue operating in the government? We're discussing everything from loss of buildings to loss of life of individuals in the community that need to be around. We're going to continue to work on this until July. This is a non-public document, so you will not see it until an emergency happens. But I just want to let the council know that that's going to be taking up a lot of time for some department heads over the next few months. On the agenda also tonight, it looks like you're voting on 2 resolutions for a second time. There is a slight difference. There was a clerical error in those 2 resolutions when it was approved. You approved the purchase of the equipment, but you did not approve the withdrawal from the capital reserve funds to pay for said equipment. So we need to just have that clarified and have the withdrawal included in there. We don't need to do it tonight, so we can have 2 readings and make sure we go through the regular process. I also just want to just clarify some things about town government, the government we have. There's a large crowd. And the one thing we heard a deliberative session is, we don't put questions on the ballot. We're not a traditional town. We're not a select board, SB2 or town meeting form of government. We're a council manager form of government. We're a representative form of government. The people elect these 7 individuals to be the board of directors of the town, and they hire a chief administrative officer, who is myself, to run the day-to-day operations of the town. We're more similar to the cities of Portsmouth, Dover, Rochester, Somersworth, and the town of Durham. They are with the town of Exeter and Hampton. It's just the form of government that the people voted in 1991, and we continue to operate under that. The other part of that is there's 2 other portions. One is the right to speak at the council meetings. The public doesn't, contrary to popular belief, the public does not have the right to speak at council meetings. They're invited to speak at council meetings. There was a case from 1977, the State versus Dominic, which states that the public, this is a business meeting of the governing body, and there can't be disruptions or other items. That you guys have the right to conduct your business. But you guys do invite public comment at the beginning. So I just want to make sure that's well aware as well. And you do have rules in your council rules that you adopt annually. And finally, just to clarify something on the rights of municipalities in enacting ordinances. Well, states are though the United States government is a creature of the state, municipalities are a creature of the state as well. That's actually been brought up in many law books. We only have the authority, which is, especially in New Hampshire, which we're a dealing rule, not a home rule, have the authority which the state provides us. You've heard 2 proposals tonight. One the state has given us the authority of, and one they have not. I just want to make clear that this is not judging any of the resolutions or ordinances, I just want people clear on what kind of form of government we have in the community. Sometimes it gets confusing, and especially when you hear other communities that are towns and they're not governed like we are. They're not. We're, like I said, we're a council manager form of government, and this is what we have. So I just want to make that clarification as well.
Okay. We move on then. Oh, I just had a question. What did you give us the final sort of? Did you get anywhere with getting some kind of consideration from the company that sold us Munis as far as the problems that we've had?
We are doing a free upgrade. We are getting compensated for part of the issues that we're having, as well as additional training for.
Okay.
We negotiated that.
And the software is now working
Yeah.
as it should.
Yeah.
So that's good. I'm sure it was frustrating in the meantime.
Yeah. Anytime we do a huge system change like that, we're gonna find bugs in the system. And that was one, but it was their issue. So.
Okay. We'll move on to committee reports, and specifically we have a report from the Water Rights Subcommittee, as I understand it. Councilor Dumont?
Yes. So I sent out on the 23rd our initial draft of what we were presenting to you folks to read and consider and hopefully just adopt tonight. Obviously, there were a couple of grammatical errors in there, so about an hour before tonight's meeting, I sent you an updated copy. I think in total there were about 12 edits that just made it flow and read better. If you have any questions on it, I'm more than happy to speak to them, but essentially what we did was following the initial RBO presentation that Answer gave us back in the summertime last year, we formed our subcommittee. We held 4 meetings. 2 of those were public hearings to hear from both sides of the debate, and then drafted the recommendation that I sent to you folks this evening. So it's probably worth reading. I'm going to read the top bolded part, which is the actual formal recommendation. The Newmarket Water Rights Subcommittee does hereby recommend the following to the Town Council. 1, that the rights-based ordinance as it currently stands is not adopted due to the issues highlighted in Attorney Radigan's letter. 2, that in the future, whether brought to the Town Council through a rights-based ordinance or some other form of legal framework, this body as a practice consider and discuss legitimate pieces of legislation. And 3, that the items the subcommittee discussed over the past few months, including all documentation in support of such movements, be sent to our state representatives and senator, as the legality of the adoption of such legal vehicles lies within the state house. So, do you have questions?
Anybody have a question? So as I understand this, we're not sending, when you suggest in item 3 that we send documents to our state representatives, that's not go with any recommendation about anything. We're not sending those documents along with a recommendation as to
Correct.
what they
It's
ought
just
to
our
do.
discussion, and that, obviously we're recommending that the town council take no further action on this issue as it currently stands, but to give to them the minutes that we have from the meeting, the items that were presented to us by Attorney Radigan, to say that, this is a discussion that not only is happening at the, state level, but down at the, the municipality, the number of towns that have adopted these RBOs, and then our discussion to decide not to adopt it. And I don't have a timeline on that yet. It is a difficult process to transcribe a lot of minutes and put everything together, which I sincerely thank Patricia Denmark for all that she does. I have a better understanding now of what she goes through, but I'm hoping to have some, binder, an electronic document that I'll have Steve approve before it gets sent out to make sure that it all meets, passes muster.
I have a couple comments.
Sure.
So I was a member of the Water Rights Subcommittee, and I want to thank Councilor Dumont for leading the group, and Councilor Cast for your participation. I thought it was a really important process, and I thought it was important that it was important for me to make sure that this group of residents and citizens of Newmarket had the ability to be heard. And I think that's, for me, that's one of the items that I think is important it's item number 2 in our recommendation is that just as a practice, this council seriously consider and discuss legitimate pieces of legislation. And that is not to say that we have made a recommendation that we should support future RBOs. And I think that that's an important distinction. Not that we don't support them, but not that we necessarily support future RBOs, but that in general, we support hearing any legislation or proposed from community members. So there's that piece. I also wanted to comment on what Steve said, because I think that on what the town administrator said, because I think that was a really important piece for me too, that the community understand our form of government. And I heard, not just through this process, but through a couple other things that have happened in town recently, including the ordinance that we're going to be voting on later, that it's not on the ballot, we don't have a say. I mean, it's no different than none of us can walk over, well, a couple people in the audience maybe can walk into the State House and propose legislation, but as residents of New Hampshire, we don't have that authority. Just like as residents of the United States, we don't have the authority to walk into the Capitol building and propose legislation on our own. So it's no different here in Newmarket. That's the form of government that we have. And so I just think it's important to note that we do have a representative form of government, and we recently had a filing period where there were 2 vacancies and nobody applied. So one of the things that I learned back when I was, I guess, labeled an activist, prior to being on the council, is that if you want to be heard, the best way to be heard is to have a seat at the table. So I strongly encourage people in the future to, if you want to have a vote, it helps to be one of the people voting, especially when there seems to be a general sort of apathy in our community. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
And I kind of echo too. I think it's great that we have the subcommittee being formed. I think Answer did great work. You guys are doing great. And I think I would like to see people get more involved and get more feedback, because even how much I learned about hearing with the RBO and stuff, that kind of helped enlighten me, and kind of hearing your presentation from youth to youth. We just need to get more feedback from the public, and that doesn't always happen, so it's great to have a full house. And we certainly want to have communication from constituents and from the town, so please be active, please get your friends out, and just share your ideas, and we'll do the best we can to consider them.
Yeah, I was just going to make a couple of comments along. I mean, I agree with the recommendations of the Water Rights Subcommittee, and I also appreciate all the work that the members, all 3 of you, have done in having those extra meetings. We all need extra meetings to attend. I understand that, so thank you very much for. And I think it's a great process that citizens and residents had a chance to be heard about this. And we've had quite a bit of commentary before the council during the public forums. I just would say this is sort of a part. I agree with the recommendations, and I'm not going to talk about RBOs. I just want to say that if this were to be considered again, this is almost as a citizen thing. There is another viewpoint about RBOs, or in that I think that the place for chemical regulation to occur. I'm not saying we have had there is a lot of work to be done in terms of improving the regulation of what chemicals go into our environment. I would in no ways disagree with that. I do not think the answer is to try to regulate chemicals used in the environment on a town-by-town basis. I don't think that's where that should happen. We had a groundwater study that was done by a UNH grad student a short time ago, and one of the takeaways, I sat on the technical committee, and one of the things I took away from that is anybody that's putting you know, our groundwater, our drinking water, not so much the aquifer that we have, you know, out where the gravel pits are. That comes through the there's a term for that, but it's coming through the sand and gravel and down in there, and that's sort of what you put on that aquifer is what goes into the groundwater there. But in other places, you know, if somebody puts chemicals on their lawn in Durham, it can very well end up in groundwater in Newmarket. It crosses lines all over the place. And if you want to effectively control that, then you need broader lines in terms of regulating chemicals. And chemicals are hard to ban entirely. They have a lot to do with our food supply, and you know, I mean, there's debates about whether you could go 100% organic entirely in agriculture, but a lot of arguments are there that you wouldn't be able to do that and continue to feed the world's people. So I think you want to use the safest chemicals you can when chemicals are used. And that's where I want an expert panel making that decision. You know, and I think just a couple of comments because it affects the town on glyphosate. You know, and I was interested in you know, this has been a good process for me. I've done some of my own homework on what some of the materials that were brought to us by Answer, and I appreciate that. You know, one of the reasons why, and I think you know, Joan did a good job of presenting this to us, you know, how, you know, the safety record on Roundup, glyphosate, is really tremendous. So the problem with that is given a good safety record, you know, given it looks pretty good safety-wise, they absolutely drench.
She did not say that. That's not what I said. She absolutely did not say that. You misheard her.
Well, I'll tell you what I said, and I'll appreciate not interruption. But I will correct a little bit. When I said it had it pretty good, you talked about the scientific reasons why they thought it might be safer than some other chemicals. I did hear you say that. You know, that's okay. That's what my interpretation was. So no, we're not having a debate here. And I would also say that, you know, in terms of world bodies, there have been several European agencies that have ruled that it's safe. My point isn't, I think people are missing my point. I'm not trying to say that Roundup is entirely safe. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is it would be hard, you know, it could be a hard thing to find a safer herbicide. You know, if you can be quiet, then please leave.
Call the cops on me then. I'm sorry. I had a reaction.
Okay. Well, and the reason I say that is because that's what's happening. European agencies are not known for their carelessness around chemicals and contamination. In England, it was already mentioned by Joan that what they do is they put it on crops before you eat it. So that's the point that I was making. It's felt to be safe, so they will apply it to things even though the crops are then going to be harvested and fed to humans. I'm not saying that's a good idea. That was not my point. My point was that people in general feel that as herbicides and chemicals in the environment go, this is fairly safe. I think it's probably not worth trying to have a long discussion because that's not even on the debate here. But my point was that I think this is something for expert committees to discuss because I don't think I think otherwise it will be chaos out there trying to regulate them at every town. But, you know, that's no more than what the subcommittees has recommended anyway, so I'll stop there. And there's nothing to vote on this, right? So
No, the only thing I would ask, would it be appropriate to dissolve the subcommittee at this point since its purpose has been fulfilled?
This is the sunset. As soon as you're done, the committee's done.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. It's an ad hoc committee.
Appreciate it.
okay, we move on to other committee reports. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Go ahead.
The Energy and Environment Committee met last night, and I wanted to bring just two things to the council's attention. One is that, I mentioned this, I think, in December. One is that we are looking to change the composition of the committee. So I've reached out to Steve, and do we have to go through the 2-meeting process for that? Okay.
You adopted a resolution to create it, so you have to do another resolution.
All right, can we work on that this week?
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we can move it forward, because it's, right now, as it stands, we have 4 regular members, and they're super committed members, but 4 isn't enough. So and I think that, and I know we've individually been approached by people who are interested in being at-large members. So I know that we can get some more involvement.
So more at-large members would be part of. Okay.
Yeah, so we want to eliminate, because we haven't had a conservation person or a planning board person. So ideally, we would just eliminate those 2 and bring in 2 more at-large members. And I think people are just spread thin. You know, if you're already serving on the Conservation Commission, it's hard to be a part of another committee. So we had Jeff, but then when he left the Conservation, we lost Jeff. But we're pretty sure, I'm pretty sure, I'm gonna say that publicly, that we can corral him back to the Energy and Environment Committee as an at-large member. And he has offered so much. He just had a lot of knowledge, so he would be a great person. And there's another person who's approached me also. So that was the first thing, and I lost my train of thought. The second item, the composting, and just kind of following through with that. So if maybe we could get together and meet about those items.
Yeah, I'll talk with Public Works Director.
Yeah, it's something that we still feel very strongly about. And then as we move forward into the new year, now that it's February, we're looking at other items too, and how we can best be of service. And so I'm going to be in touch with Greg, the facilities director, about just a couple questions that we have. So that's all from the Energy and Environment Committee.
Okay. Any other committee reports?
I don't have any.
Planning board met last Tuesday, and they're with the stormwater regulation, redrafting and realigning those regulations. The draft is now going to go into peer review, and they are including stakeholders. I don't know if any engineers or developers are interested in participating in that. I think if they would either contact you, Steve, or the town planner, or the planning board. Anyone on the planning board can direct them to when that's going to occur. So that's coming up. Also, they're moving into forming a committee to do the master plan chapter reviews. And I said I would ask the council if there were any particular chapters that the council felt would align with our goals. I think the one was the economic development, but perhaps also traffic also would kind of dovetail. That did come up in our goal setting. It's fairly high up on the list. That's just a suggestion. If you need a list of the chapters, I can help you. I can get you a list. But I didn't know if there was anything you wanted me to take back to the planning board in your next meeting specifically.
When is your next meeting?
February 12th.
And how many chapters are they planning to review? Do you know, just 1 or 2?
It's going to just be 1 or 2 because that's kind of the scope of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're trying to figure out. The committee's going to be, I think, figuring out which ones come up with that and start doing that work.
I guess my question for you is, you're not necessarily looking for input from individual counselors on what chapters we find most important based off of our interpretation of goal setting. You're just looking for the council's.
Yes, the council.
Okay.
Yeah, but I don't have a list in front of me, and it's a pretty long list, and it has dates when they were last updated. So probably the best. I don't know how to.
It's on the website.
What the best approach would be if the council wanted to kind of give some feedback to the planning board about that.
Traditionally, whenever they've had chapters, they've presented to the council, even though the planning board adopts it.
Uh-huh.
They get input at that point in time. If if
Okay.
a council wants a new chapter, it's usually the council as a whole,
Right.
not an individual.
Right, but it's sort of what we're being invited to do here is to say, do we agree that those would be the best chapters for them to tackle next? Is that sort of the question? in front
Yeah,
of-
just some early input.
Sort of,
I think they're.
is that sort of the way the planning board is going to look at economic development and traffic? Is that, do you feel like that's what they're doing? That does seem like it aligns with the
Yeah,
council.
if I may, I think and I've talked to the community development director on this, that as it relates to the economic development, it's sort of, we want to probably wait to see what the economic development consultants come up with. We know the council's goal is to redevelop the gateways, and they're gonna come up with sort of like small master plans on those areas and what kind of zoning we should have, or what kind of development in that, and it will come to the council. That's probably a good way to segue that into a recommendation to the planning board, is let the council, that would be the council's recommendation to the planning board, was what they come up with.
What's the time frame?
It could be
Ballpark?
sometime later this year. I mean, they're just starting now.
Yeah. Okay.
What is the timeframe on the planning board?
Well, they haven't even formed the committee yet, because that would be the next step.
Fair enough. So there's no
That's coming up in
date
the next
in mind,
meeting.
or, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
Each year, they're supposed to do 1 or 2 chapters,
Okay.
or every other year, something like that, so that it keeps moving through the master plan.
Yeah.
Each chapter gets some kind of regular update.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But they have some choices on which ones to focus on, depending on what the priorities of the town are, or how out of date things are. So that's
Could email the
that's
list.
the point of my question, is just to see if there's any opportunity to align it early on, so.
So what is the
So we'll wait
conclusion?
until,
Yeah, wait till I think, like I said, we're just starting with the economic development consultants.
Uh-huh.
So, then
So maybe maybe economic development isn't good because you want to work with a consultant first, so maybe other chapters would be what they
That's a
would
good
want to
idea.
do this year, because they do, then they would do something else, and so maybe that's the reason not to do economic development this year?
Right, I don't wanna tell another elected board what they should or should not do, but I would highly recommend that.
If
since
they're
we're
looking
doing it.
feedback from the
Yeah.
council,
Yeah,
that
just
could be
feedback.
feedback from the council not to do economic development for that, if the council agrees with that. I'm sort of an agnostic on this, but I'm just trying to help condense what we're saying.
I could just bring to their attention that the timing
Yeah.
might be a consideration, and
Yeah.
it'd be better served next year or something.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I think what they were trying to do is figure out what were some of the oldest chapters that hadn't been reviewed already,
Right.
and not necessarily gonna review every chapter, because some chapters may not be that important,
Right.
so.
Right.
So I think it's hard without looking at the list
Yeah.
to give you much feedback right
Okay.
now, though. I think that's fair, unless somebody else has a comment on that suggestion.
You can
Okay.
email the list out.
Yeah. And I think there's time for that.
Yeah.
That's what's up with the planning board.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Okay. Moving on. We're at we start with the ordinance number 1 on I would accept a motion to approve ordinance number 1, 2018-2019, amending chapter 20 of the Code of the Town of Newmarket, prohibiting the purchase, use, and possession of tobacco to anyone under 21.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 1, 2018-2019.
Second.
So, do we have any comments from the counselor?
I have some
Counselor
comments. First of all, I just want to thank the Youth to Youth group. The presentation was great, and the data and the facts was just great to have and present before all of the council, so thank you for that. I also wanted the letter from Mr. Mazzoni, I don't know if you've had a chance to read that, but I wanted to thank him for submitting that letter as well. I don't know if it has to be read or...
You have it as part of your records.
Okay, part of the records, okay. All right, and then with that, I do have a couple of comments I'd like to read that I wrote. So, in regard to the ordinance, So the ordinance that is on the agenda for public hearing, along with discussion by the town council this evening, is in regard to raising the age to 21 to sell, purchase, and be in possession of tobacco products. This ordinance will cover not only cigarettes, but electronic cigarettes, aka e-cigarettes. This came to me by the way of the Newmarket Junior Senior High Youth to Youth group, who reached out and asked for my help and support to bring this to the town council. I truly thank the Youth to Youth group for approaching me with this important issue for our community. After meeting with the Youth to Youth group, it was very clear to me that this was an important step we need to make, and I am bringing this forth to the council. I strongly believe that raising the age to 21 will assist to deter young people from starting an addictive habit that is extremely difficult to break, and without question can lead to several health risks. I also believe that many people that begin to use tobacco products do so prior to the age of 21. There has been a question why electronic cigarettes are included, and I would like to provide a little bit of information on that. Our young people today are engaging in vaping, electronic cigarettes, aka e-cigarettes, more and more. Corporations that manufacture these products are targeting younger people. E-cigarettes can be purchased with various levels of nicotine, which is addictive. For example, if you look at some of the research that has been done and can be found on the American Lung Association and CDC websites, you will see the details of a growing concern and need to try to deter young people from starting this habit. I have a couple of snippets from the American Lung Association site, which are electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes include e-pens, e-pipes, e-hookahs, e-cigars, and known collectively as ENDS, E-N-D-S, electronic nicotine delivery systems. According to the FDA, e-cigarettes are devices that allow users to inhale an aerosol containing nicotine or other substances. E-cigarettes are the most commonly used tobacco products among kids, and it's become an epidemic. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine concluded that there is substantial evidence that if a youth or young adult uses an e-cigarette, they are at an increased risk of using traditional cigarettes. The Surgeon General reports e-cigarette use among youth is a significant public health concern, and steps must be taken by parents, educators, and especially policymakers to discourage use of e-cigarettes. Few more bits of information from, or more information can be found at the American Lung Association website, along with links to 15 other sites. And also from the CDC website, a couple of pieces of information. Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine, the addictive drug in regular cigarettes, cigars, and other tobacco products. Nicotine can harm the developing adolescent brain. The brain keeps developing until the age of 25. Using nicotine in adolescence can harm the parts of the brain that control attention, learning, mood, and impulse control. Each time a new memory is created or a new skill is learned, stronger connections or synapses are built between brain cells. Young people's brains build synapses faster than adult brains. Nicotine changes the way these synapses are formed. Additionally, the CDC website has more information there if you'd like to look at it. So I think that across the country we are seeing this type of updates to age requirements more and more, and I fully support the Youth to Youth group and this ordinance, and I hope the council will as well.
I'll add just a little bit. I'm a high school teacher. I've taught high school and middle school for 12 years, and speaking just to the e-cigarettes, vape pens, that's become a really big problem in schools. The main reason being is that they're very much marketed to young people with flavors like mango and bubblegum, and they light up different colors, the vape pens. So we've been dealing with that at the school that I teach at, and they're virtually unable to be detected to the point that kids have even that if they're in the bathroom, the smoke disperses, you can't tell. So we've caught students with the nicotine products. We actually caught a couple with cannabis products using the same type of vape pen. So it's a really big deal, in particular with the e-cigs and stuff. And I just, with all the brain development, a lot of research that the frontal cortex isn't even developed until age 25. It's just, these are dangerous because you can't, if it's a cigarette in school, you're going to catch it. But if it's a vape pen, you're probably not going to catch it early enough to prevent it. So I think cutting it off at the sale would be preferred. So yeah.
I have a few comments, and So when I first read this ordinance, or even heard that it was going to happen, I thought it was a no-brainer for me anyway. And I want to thank Sean Murphy and Phil Nazaro for their comments, because they brought up some very valid points, and I think that it was important to hear that viewpoint as well. But it's still a no-brainer for me. I took a whole bunch of notes, and so I'm gonna read some of my chicken scratch. A couple comments. The vaping issue in schools, it's in every school. It's not an issue. It's not a Newmarket problem. It's a teenager problem. It's in my son's school. I just had coffee with a friend who has a high schooler at Oyster River. It's the school you teach at. It's at every school, and I think that the statistic that cigarette smoking has gone down among teenagers, it's a fabulous statistic, but the vaping and the e-cigarettes has clearly risen, and it's concerning. So let's see, what else did I want to say? As far as the question that age restrictions don't necessarily limit behavior, I agree. I don't think that it necessarily correlates to the change in behavior. I do think, though, that changing the social perception, and so I think the age restrictions help to change the social perception, and I do think that changes behavior. The other piece that I wanted to mention is so when I was in high school, which seems like a really long time ago, we could get a pass to the smoking area. I mean, that was the atmosphere when I grew up. And like, you had at 16, with your parents' permission, you could go to the smoking area. Yeah, and I did. And I think, and at that time, people smoked in malls, on airplanes, everywhere. I mean, in offices, it was normal. And that, for me anyway, it wasn't until the social perception changed that I could quit smoking. So, thank you.
So, my comment is, while I think laws and ordinances can be a helpful tool in affecting change, I think fundamentally they're not the key. I think the key is changing social norms. And my experience is both, from being a child, when Lady Bird Johnson had hers, don't be a litter bug, and it changed. When I was very little, there was trash everywhere. People just throw stuff out their windows, and it transformed within a few years. And she did it through a public campaign to change social norms. And that was highly effective, and I think we still live under the effects of that, although it's not, it's given way to more, people throwing stuff out if they feel like it. I think smoking was also changed more through social norms, although I really appreciated that there wasn't smoking on airplanes, because I travel a lot for business, so I was grateful for that. But I think, just bottom line, I think we have to search for deeper, better ways to do this if it's so important. I think there's peer pressure, there's groups like yours where you reach out to other students. I assume that's what you do. You meet with other students, and you're trying to affect norm changes that way, right? And I know you're looking for support through an ordinance, but I think that approach is far more effective and will be. It just is harder work. I think passing an ordinance is sort of, honestly, a Band-Aid, And the other part of it is, I think I'm hearing a lot of conflation of we're trying to solve a problem that is perceived to exist for younger kids under 18 by changing the situation for people who are 18 and are entitled right now to purchase and own and possess these materials and use them. And I'm just kind of like, that is the age of majority. There's also the concept of age of license. I did a little research on this because I heard a lot of conflation of, well, if you're old enough to serve in the Army, why can't you drink? Why can't you do this? Well, we also allow 16-year-olds to drive who are below the age of 18. That is the age of license, and that's a different concept. Governments are entitled to license behavior and activities, but still consider you an adult from a legal and responsibility perspective. So if you break a law, you're liable as an 18-year-old if you are an adult. So you're going to be treated as an adult from a legal perspective that way. But the age of license is kind of a different concept, and I'm not convinced that we should be applying a change of what 18-year-olds are licensed to do through an ordinance. So those are my thoughts on it.
Anybody else want to speak up on this ordinance?
I'll speak to it.
Sure.
First, I'd like to say thank you, Gretchen, for coming out against this, because I wasn't sure if I'd be the only person. I have a very hard time looking at this ordinance and taking it seriously with the notion that it's going to solve a problem that to me sounds like a discipline issue within the schools and with parenting children. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody how to be a parent, and I'm not going to tell the schools how to run their facilities, because that's not my job. But it's also not my job to tell someone who's 18 years old that they can't go in and buy a pack of cigarettes if they want to or not. I grew up in a smoking home. For 18 years, my parents smoked regularly. It was awful. When I'm around cigarette smoke now, I get ill. I hate it. I still force my parents to do it outside when I'm around, and I actively encourage them to step away from it because it's not healthy and it will kill them soon. It's weird watching it, growing up and having this perspective of, it's almost like someone's withering away every time they take another puff, every time they go through a pack, whether that's their third or fourth one for the week, or they're just starting out as a first time smoker at the age of 18, like I saw when I was in high school. It's not good. We should never encourage the use of it. I think tobacco companies are sick for what they push and the tactics that companies, especially Juul, are using to get people who are your age to get into their products, and whether that's having people buy them illegally and give it to someone under the age of 18. But I don't think that this ordinance is going to do much to prevent that issue, as mentioned by Councilor Cast. And I also think that it's irresponsible to tell someone who is an adult that they cannot have access to whatever products they want. I'm not going to tell them that they can't eat a Big Mac every day for their life, even though it might give them, a heart attack. I'm not going to tell them that they can't go, 90 miles an hour down 95. Obviously, if they get caught, they're going to get arrested and charged for that. But, you have the right to make your own choices. It's the benefit of having free will, but you also have to recognize the consequences of those choices. And I don't think that we have the responsibility to force our will upon other people. I think it's immoral. I think it's irresponsible. I think that this ordinance should never have made it this far. I think the actions of groups like yours are by far 1,000 times more effective than what this ordinance would do. As Gretchen said, peer pressure, positive peer pressure in this case, don't take up a bad habit, is the right way, and that should be mirrored by all of us, especially as town leaders, to, if we see somebody who's under the age, who's thinking about using, Juul products or even just, smoking, that is not smart, and you should move away from it, and here's why. Because we know that it's bad, and, you have, the right to have this information presented to you. But I just cannot support this ordinance in any way, shape, or form, and I will be voting against it.
Well, I will say a couple of things. One is I'll say I am going to support the ordinance, and I don't feel irresponsible in doing it, and I don't call you irresponsible because you don't support it. So I think that would be, you'll have to kind of watch the language we use. I will say that I think what has happened, you know, we talked some about regulation in various areas, and regulation is a big topic these days. I think that it's sort of a failure of regulation at the federal level. The electronic cigarette products were originally presented to the FDA to help people quit smoking as a health product, and but in some ways it doesn't, because I think there are good people at the FDA. I think if they had a way of doing that, which the science I think supported, but not allow this, you know, callous, rampant, clear marketing to young people. And if you watch what's happened with Juul, they clearly became a very big company doing something that was against the health of our youth. And in doing that, they became a valuable, I think they just sold out to a big tobacco company for, what, $23 billion or something. It was a huge amount of money. So they certainly were rewarded for their, I don't know, callousness maybe is the word I'd use for that. But I certainly think that, you know, and I'm not, I think it's tough to say, well, the 18-year-old, you know, I think the argument that here's a right that they've attained through that age and now it's being taken away, I'm sympathetic with that. I think it's but it's not true that we don't set guardrails up for people at different ages. People that are 18, 19, 20 are not allowed to drink now in the state of New Hampshire. So you don't get all of the rights that you'll get at adulthood when you reach 18. And so there are different ages where you reach different things. I think as a parent, you know, people have talked about the impact on parents. As parents, if I were trying to, and I certainly would, if my children were that young, and I have grandchildren, will they be that age before? Well, it'll get here fast. And when they do, I think parents need all the help they can. And having something be illegal might be a help to a parent that's trying to prevent their children from using something. I'm not sure on that, but I'm willing to take the chance. So that's why I'm supporting the ordinance.
I'll just add one more brief thing. I like the discussion we're having. This is kind of basic. I agree a lot with what the two of you said in terms of I don't like regulating or telling people to do. I do feel there are a few exceptions, alcohol being one. You drink alcohol, get in a car, bad things happen. We know nicotine's addictive. We know tobacco causes cancer. So there are certain things I'm okay with putting the guardrail up. But I totally agree with, I hear the concerns of over-regulating and telling people what to do, but this is one of the few things that I would break from my two counselors with. So good discussion, though, I think, and I agree with most of what I've heard so far. So
I just say one. All right.
So the rule is he has a
Oh, sorry, I
chance
didn't
first
see you.
before a second.
No,
I'm sorry.
and
Sorry.
thank you very much for that. And I also grew up in a household where family members smoked. My brother smoked, my sister smoked. I was the youngest, so watching them as role models wasn't the best thing. My mother smoked until she hit the brakes and went to stop my brother, and cigarette went in his eye. So a little bit of an issue there. My stepfather passed away September 14th, 91. I came home from a college football game and basically waited for me to come home so his family could be there when he passed. He had quit smoking. He was smoking 4 packs a day. But he quit smoking about 6 months before that, just before he came down with the cancer. So killed him pretty quickly. I think that the major issue here is the Juul products And I don't know if there's a way to, whether it's banning those types of products or.
I think the FDA has banned the flavored products. I think that those.
Okay.
I think that's that.
But the kids are still getting them.
Yeah, well, it's that may help over time, but it's really gotten well established in the youth culture, I think. So.
Right. No, absolutely. And I've seen letters come home. I have 3 kids in, let's see, 3rd, 5th, and 7th grade. So you may know them, you may not. Grace, the other Grace. And I trust their judgment and what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. But I know peer pressure is a major problem. It really is. I know that when you're 18, you can vote. You can go into the military. You can do a lot of things. You can run for council. But I'm not a smoker. I'm against smoking, so that's all I have to say.
Sorry. So I just want to follow up. It is a great discussion that we're having and different viewpoints, and I agree with many of them. I'm also a parent of middle schoolers, and I do trust my children, but peer pressure is a huge thing, and things happen, you know. Not that they're bad kids, things happen. So we put restrictions on a lot of different things. People have mentioned alcohol. You know, some cities in the United States have fines for littering. You know, there's different things that we do to try to curb people's behaviors. And I agree that advocacy or getting information out to people is a great way, but putting heavier restrictions on help that, and I think they work hand in hand. So that is another reason why I'm obviously in support of this. In addition, there's new evidence coming out all the time, new scientific evidence about how the brain works, what the brain's affected, that we didn't know years ago, that we need to take into account and evolve with how we think about how we make rules and restrictions. And that's what we're here to look at. That's why we're here. So, again, as you all know, I'm in support of this, and I think that's it.
So I think we're ready to vote.
Councilor Burns.
Aye.
Councilor Finch.
Aye.
Councilor Dumont.
Nay.
Councilor Cast.
Nay.
Councilor Bowden.
Aye.
Councilor Weinstein.
Aye.
Councilor Pike.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-2.
Thank you.
All righty. Is everybody staying on? You're staying on for a while.
Yeah, they need to go do their homework.
All righty. So we move
Thank
on
you.
to. Okay, they are leaving. All right, that's fine. I'd also like to add again, that was a nice job in the presentation.
Really good job.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thank you.
So they weren't here for us.
Go ahead. So we're down to resolutions in the first reading at this point.
Right.
Resolution 2018-2019-24, Lamprey River Sampling Program for the Wastewater Treatment Facilities Administrative Order by Consent. Whereas the town agreed to the administrative order by consent has in exchange for a less stringent total nitrogen limit of 8.0 milligrams per liter, and whereas the town is required to perform sampling of the Lamprey River for engineering evaluation to determine if the total nitrogen permit of 8.0 milligrams per liter shall change or stay the same, and whereas the wastewater department performed a formal bidding process, and whereas the University of Hampshire was a low bid at $147,343. Now therefore let it be resolved by the Newmarket Town Council that the Town Council authorizes the Town Administrator to enter into an agreement with the University of New Hampshire for what is necessary sampling in the Lamprey River for the engineering evaluation that is due on December 31st, 2022. First reading February 6, 2019. Mr. Chair, with the next two resolutions, since you've already approved them minus the withdrawal from the capital reserve, would you just want to do them by title only?
Sure.
Resolution 2018-2019-25, the purchase of the 2020 Elgin Pelican Street Sweeper purchase and withdrawal from the capital reserve fund. Resolution 2018-2019-26, purchase of a 2020 International Dump Truck with plow equipment and with the withdrawal of the capital reserve fund. And finally, Resolution 2018-2019-27 relating to withdrawal of school impact fees. Whereas the Newmarket School District has requested impact fees in the amount of $226,783.97 for the renovations of the Newmarket Elementary School. And whereas the town has the impact fees collected for the school projects total $226,783.97. Now therefore let it be resolved that the Newmarket Town Council does authorize the expenditure of school impact fees not to exceed $226,783.97 for the renovation of the Newmarket Elementary School. And those are the resolutions tonight.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question about the first one? I'm assuming that we'll get a little more background information about that and how and if that has to happen on a regular basis.
Yeah,
and
he'll be here to present
okay,
it.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So, is there any other correspondence to the town council beyond what we've talked about?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a message from a neighbor of mine, Alan Snyder, in regards to Consolidated Communications, phone company, leaving their phone books, which I don't think people really even use anymore. Basically littering, throwing next to people's mailboxes, and next week it snowed and they're all over the place, so we'll find them in the spring. But that was Ellen's concern, was the waste, the litter, and how to get them to stop delivering. I know when it was Fairpoint Communications, you could sign up and to get off the list for receiving the phone books. Since it's changed hands to Consolidated Communications, a much bigger company, bigger database, so I think people may need to contact, if they're still receiving the phone books from Consolidated Communications, to reach out and ask them to stop sending. So,
I guess one question was, do they have the right to distribute phone books in that manner?
Yeah.
Can't be, I mean, they're just kind of throwing them on the ground by
Correct.
your mailbox.
We don't have regulations of a telephone. It's the Public Utilities Commission,
Including phone books.
including phone actions of the
Because I don't think they're following any list. I think they're just throwing them at every mailbox, so.
they're not even putting their
Right, they just put them on the ground.
on the ground.
Yeah. I agree with the complaints, but it doesn't sound like there's much that can be done about it except at a higher level. Any closing comments by town councilors?
I just put a reminder out that our town election is Tuesday, March 12th, right?
Correct.
Absentee ballots can be obtained from the town clerk, which I will need to obtain because I'll be out of town. So, yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Also, trying to plan the candidates night, so people can come in and meet Helen and anyone else who decides to run. Looking at the Tuesday before, which will be the 5th of March,
Hosted by
Correct.
the NBA?
It'll have to be hosted by NBA, yeah. So it's just trying to get that coordinated and getting the moderator scheduled, so.
Yeah.
Just waiting to finalize on that.
I think it would be great if you can pull it off. I think that it would be really nice for a broader group to see who is making themselves available for write-in here. It's you know, it's important.
If I may, I'll say on that topic, last year running for town council, there was no candidates night, which in my opinion made it difficult to reach out to individuals who either might not go to regular town events or just in general I don't have the opportunity to associate with. And I think that was kind of not necessarily a failure, but a bit of a letdown to be able to really interact with Councilor Burns, who was there for re-election, myself for the first time, and the other two candidates who were interested. So I'm very supportive of the NBA and hosting this event, and I think as a private citizen, I'm more than willing to help out as needed to make sure that we have the opportunity to do this.
There's more than just the council positions that are
Right.
where there's no persons filing. Do we know if the MBA's does that include candidates for all positions?
We do not. I don't want to put this out there. The town does not get involved in candidates. We do. It's up to the NBA to make their rules. We don't know what their rules are. That's up to them.
Right. But traditionally, when they've had candidates night, it includes candidates for all the offices in town.
That was all I was asking.
I just want to make sure that
You
we
were
don't
clear.
do it. Yeah.
That hadn't been
We got
mentioned,
it.
so it is important to say that. Yes.
Okay. If there's no other comments by councilors, thank you for a vigorous debate tonight, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.